we are hopefully, there we go. We are hopefully a friendly group of fellow health stores. So I don't think we need to worry too much about anybody kind of sharing any information or anything. This is just a kind of group between us. So thank you for joining us again for Shop Talk. Be hosted by myself and Vicky from Beanfreaks, but tonight we have got Orley from Terranova, who's going to talk about male health. So usual structure, Vicky and I'll just do a little bit of introduction, and it sounds like Vicky's got some really interesting approaches to share with us. I'll just say briefly, so I'm Jo, I'm from Amaranth. I'm the owner of Amaranth, and I'm also a nutritionist, a nutritional therapist. Just to kind of give a little bit of an update on Shop Talk, we run a session on the last Wednesday of every month, and the sessions will vary between what we did traditionally last year, which is we got a guest speaker from one of our amazing suppliers and patrons to come along and give us some technical information. So we're still going to do those sessions, but we're going to integrate a little bit more, because as the year went on, we developed lots of different formats, but we thought it was going to be better to structure them all so that we've got something on the last Wednesday of each month, so you can kind of put that as the date in your diary. Vicky and I will keep hosting, but it will either be a supplier education session, or it will be more of a business marketing session, and they'll be run by Dave from Dave and Goliath, who ran a couple of sessions last year. Or the other thing is Cheryl from Viridian and Sheath Street Health Store. She's going to run her mastermind sessions. So they'll run kind of those three, and then we'll start again with the same ones. So the next one we've got end of June, the last Wednesday of June, which I think is about the 29th. That's going to be with Dave, and that's going to be about promoting products in store using point of sale. Of course, we're always open to suggestions. We kind of put these things on as Health Store UK to hopefully give information, get the stores together, get a bit of talking, get us all knowing each other a little bit more. But any ideas, any topics from business, from education, things you want to chat about in Mastermind, just chuck them over, and we can you can email me. So I'm just Joanne at amaranth-wellbeing.com, or go via the Health Stores UK website. So that is me, and that is Shop Talk. So like I say, thank you for joining us. We've got a fair few stores here today. I will let Vicky introduce herself. The other thing is, just think this is an incredibly informal session. It's all just for health stores. If you want to say anything at any point, say anything. But also with regards to maybe the more sort of structured part, when Orley's doing her presentation, if you've got any comments to put in notes, any questions to put in notes, then please do. And we hopefully will have plenty of time to address those as well. So I'll stop talking for a minute and hand over to Vicky.
Hello, most of you know me, but I'm Vicky Perks. I'm from Beanfreaks. I'm health food store owner for 30, 40 odd years, and clinical nutritionist as well. I'm not going to take too technical. We do really well with men's health. I was saying this to Orley earlier. Because I'm from Wales, you may have not quite grasped that, we have free prescriptions. That rather buggers things up, particularly with menopause. It kind of is an area where, we can get free HRT, you know? So it's kind of it's a dual-edged sword, you know? But men's health is quite an interesting area, because basically you have an awful lot of gentlemen that are very proud of themselves, really kind of quite difficult to kind of express themselves when it comes to kind of areas that really hit their core as a fundamental what it is to be a man. And it's a horrendous situation sometimes. I've always tackled it, and I am one of these types that will talk to anybody about anybody. I think if you hold your customer in the highest regard, that anything that they say, it's a safe space for them to do, you will never go too far wrong. At the same time, you also have to hold yourself in the highest regard, that if you find somebody is saying things that you find inappropriate, call them on it. You can say quite happily, actually, no, I don't feel very comfortable with this conversation, because although 99 0.99% of our customers are really gorgeous, lovely people. You can get strange people, and be okay with saying, no, this doesn't feel comfortable. Quite often I would possibly even say, you know, actually, I think you need to come back in when my brother's in here, or if you've got a male member of staff. Or you can say, actually, no, I don't want to have this conversation. Please leave my store. That's okay too. But like I said, that's really rare. The other thing is, when you go back to your stores, have a little chat with your staff. Orley's going to go into the technically, but again, a lot of customers with erectile dysfunction and all kinds of problems. Some staff members may be really uncomfortable with talking about that. And once you can kind of work out which member of your staff is happy about conversing, and which is really, I really don't want to go near that, then you're kind of, again, the more you're aware of your staff, the more you make it easier to be able to deal with this. I always think it's a good idea to have a safe word. And this is not just about like erectile dysfunction issues or things like that. I just think if you have a safe phrase that you use in your store, that if any of your staff is uncomfortable about having a conversation, they can say to you, oh, Doreen, do you have the blue vitamins? And then basically you'll know, quick, I need to sort her out. Again, this is something that I have with staff. It can be, we use it if we've got thieves, but equally, if somebody's out of the kind, you don't always want to say, hey, I don't want to talk to this stranger, he's a bit nutter, you know, but at least you can kind of work out there's something not quite here right, and you can kind of investigate and work out. I think putting in boundaries is really important. These are kind of difficult areas sometimes to have a conversation with. If you've got your boundaries in place, then really they're not bad. They're just, it's another set of problems. I mean, having had a child and having had somebody looking up every different direction, you kind of like, nothing phases me these days. So, you know, and again, my heart always goes out. We have a lot of foreign, well, that's the wrong word. I have a lot of all nations come into my store, and particularly some of my Muslim clients really have difficulties with kind of this area because it's fundamental core with their manhood. You know, it's really important for them to be fertile, to have produced a child. And again, fertility issues for that group of individuals are a real major concern. So again, hold them in your heart and give them the best advice that you can. And on that basis, I will hand you back to Orley. There is actually one other thing. Sorry, I know I've gone on. We're going to talk about men's health. This is huge for me, okay? If you have gentlemen with prostate health problems, please can you recommend them to go to their doctor and get a PSA test? My dad recently passed, and this is the one thing he should have done. He didn't have any symptoms. He didn't, but until he had symptoms. And when he had symptoms, he was already stage 4 prostate cancer. So it's really important that we were told after the age of 40, if they do it like an annual test and just get their PSA levels checked, you know, it's something I bang on a lot about in the shop now. But, you know, if I can bang on to you lot as well, please get somebody checked. You never know when you're saving a life. Anyway, enough of me. There we go. Do you need anything to add into that, Joe? I've rather kind of dominated.
I just think as I was listening there, I think it's interesting the difference in demographics, because I was thinking about this when I was in the store today and kind of reflecting on sort of what sort of questions we get from men. And to be honest, the questions we get from men are along the similar lines of they're not specific men's health issues. So we get sleep. We get digestive issues. We actually don't get, interestingly, we used to have a city centre store, and we would get more of the male reproductive variation on questions around that in that store. I think where we are now, it is a very different demographic, and whether that's the demographic we've got now are not talking as much or not appreciating the different ways that they can be supported. We do get a lot of men that come for one-to-one consultations though, and I think that's interesting. Whilst we might get less in the store, a big percentage of our one-to-one consultations are male consultations, but they tend to be more focused around a lot around digestion, sleep, stress, anxiety.
So-
So those things we're seeing in general health.
Totally. I think that's, particularly with kind of, I definitely feel having the kind of more diverse culture in the centre of Cardiff definitely brings, because, your average white bloke is not willing to talk about his winky any which way, So it's like, sorry, but, it's kind of very much what are your local people really. So, but, I just think it's something. You will find some men are really kind of quite open with their conversations, and it's never something I ever try and tease out of somebody. It wouldn't be something I would open up a conversation with, but quite happy they are to tell me everything and in every kind of minute level of detail. But again, it's like you said, as long as they're not pushing the boundaries and it's not kind of going, uncomfortable levels, then, I'm quite happy to discuss them. And I know we haven't had the brief conversation with Orley, that I know she's going to talk a lot about things that are actually coming up more and more the problem, where you're looking at people with blood sugar issues and what that has. So anyway, I'm really looking forward to what you say.
Thank you. Great. Should I just share my screen? Let's do that.
So.
Great. So can everyone see that first page? We're all good.
Yeah.
Okay. Brilliant. So when Joe suggested we talk about male health because it is Father's Day this month, I thought, wow, what a great idea, because it is one of those areas that really, honestly, we don't talk about as much as we do female health and all sorts of other conditions and health issues. And as I delved deeper into the rabbit hole of male health, I realized that actually, as Vicky said, we are going to be looking at things that affect male, female, cardiovascular, diabetes, all of these other things come into play here as well. So I was very excited about doing this. And let me see, my screen has frozen. As I was saying to Joe earlier, this happened to me I'm going to stop share and let me try reshare. Let's go into that one. Okay, let's see if that one works. No. Okay, let's try again. Because there's different screens that you can share. Probably what I need to do on my own computer. There we go. Let's close that. Sorry, we will get there. Okay, let's share screen again. And let's put that up and let's go into that. Should work now. There we go. Right. So I'm just going to move this down. So when we talk about male health, we refer to it as the silent health crisis. Why? This is because, as Vicky was saying, men generally don't come into health food stores and say, right, I need to, deal with this and I need to look into that, and generally don't like going to their doctors for all sorts of examinations. And we'll talk more about this later, but we call it a health crisis because when you look at the statistics around male health, it's interesting to note that, and again, my screen has frozen. I wonder why this is happening. Let me just escape. No, this is very odd. Let's try again. Just going to close that. Okay, let's try to do it like this, and then yes,
work.
Yes.
Just go through it and talk through your notes.
Okay.
We can always email your.
You can look at the slides. Okay.
Yeah,
okay. All right. Let me try. Last resort.
Email it over to me. I can be messing with it while you're.
Perfect. Okay. Yeah, it might be this whole share screen thing we were saying earlier. Let's go into documents again, talks. So I've just closed everything down on my screen so that in case there was. Okay.
So the way it did work when we did a test.
Yes, it worked perfectly. And I said, last time I did this, my screen froze. Okay, let's try.
Orley.
There we go. It's okay. Okay. Let's share and let's put this up again. And I wonder if I keep it, maybe I should keep it
Maybe
on the
try and
pane.
try
There
and
we go.
not as a slideshow and just do it.
Yeah. Okay, it's working for now. So yes, so men live 4.4 years less than women. Their lifespan is shorter than women's lifespan. The top 3 reasons for their reduced lifespan is cardiovascular disease, suicide, and motor vehicle accidents. And very sadly, 70% of suicides are committed by men. Interestingly, though, men make up 56%, only 56% of the workforce, yet 94% of workforce fatalities are men. Men are also more likely to die from heart disease at an earlier age and twice as likely as women to have a heart attack. Now, interestingly, men also have an increased risk of dying from diabetes. And of course, heart disease is the leading cause of death in adults with diabetes. So there's a connection between diabetes and heart disease, as we know. And also, interestingly, up to 75% of diabetic men experience erectile dysfunction. So when men usually come in, sort of saying, oh, I've got issues with, we generally look at the emotional aspects, but we always ask them to have their blood sugar checked. So keep an eye on that, please. And of course, it is very much circulation related. So have a whole heart check, cardiovascular system, do the lot. Men are also significantly at higher risk of dying from liver disease, and 11% of men will be diagnosed with prostate cancer in their lifetime. That's quite a large percentage. And men who experience baldness, especially at an earlier age, are more likely to develop prostate cancer. So that's an interesting little factor. So this is why we call it a health crisis. We'll see why we call it a silent health crisis very shortly. But the top 5 male health concerns, essentially, that we're looking at and that we need to consider are heart disease, so cardiovascular disease, cancer, specifically prostate cancer. Testicular cancer is very rare. Prostate cancer, sadly, is more common. Diabetes, mental health, substance abuse, and stress, and interestingly, respiratory disease, so chronic obstructive pulmonary disease. These are the top 5 male health concerns and the top 5 reasons that we'll see men popping into the health food store, or usually more likely their wives or their partners. So what's the rationale for these increased risks? As Vicky was saying, there's definitely cultural differences. There's definitely social and economic differences. And men are the ones that are often faced with increased pressure and demand to provide in challenging times, in poor socioeconomic conditions and disparities. And yes, we're trying to work towards more equality, but there is still this huge factor where the man is still seen as the breadwinner, as the main earner, especially if the woman, the wife, has to, look after the kids or take off maternity leave. So this is still a huge factor. Men also tend to take on more high stress, high risk occupations, interestingly. And then, of course, we come to lifestyle choices. Interestingly, men do tend to smoke more excessively and consume alcohol more frequently than women, even in this day and age. These behaviors, of course, predispose men to a wider range of health risks like obesity, diabetes, hypertension, and cardiovascular disease. And finally, we have the psychological factors. This is why Vicky was saying that we need to appreciate that there is an emotional element to male health. It's not just a physiological element. Men are more inclined to take risks, which can lead to accidents, especially at work, and health issues. Women tend to be more risk averse, and they are definitely 100% more likely to visit the doctor for annual examinations and preventative services than men are. There's these societal expectations around masculinity as well that discourage open discussion about emotions, about seeking help, about saying, you know what, I need help, I can't do this. And this leads to underreporting and delayed intervention. And even in this day and age where we're trying to sort of, see more equality and more, there is still these factors that are affecting male health and increasing risk factors for certain health conditions like diabetes, cardiovascular disease, mental health, substance abuse. So really, when we're addressing male health, what we should be doing is using a multifaceted approach. We need to look at stress and we need to manage that. We need to promote healthier lifestyles. It's okay not to drink as much as your friends or to go, you know what, I'm actually looking after my waistline here, and I'm going to the gym more. And yes, call me a metrosexual, do what you want, but yes, I am looking into that now. And so also raising an awareness about the importance of risk prevention and utilizing the healthcare systems that are there to help and support. And so for a truly holistic approach, we need to address the root causes that underlie all these main health concerns, because how do we address all of them? Always look at the root causes. And this is where we look at inflammation, whatever causes inflammation, and stress. These root causes often lead to all of the 5 top male health concerns, and not just in men, in women too. But before we delve into what we can do about it, I just need to touch on, because I know there are a lot of brilliant therapists that work in many health food stores that like the little details and little extra information to understand, why am I recommending saw palmetto, nettle root? Why am I saying, look, you need to address your blood sugar and you need to look at your stress? So to do that, I'm just going to quickly delve into what's so important about the main primary sex hormone in men. In other words, testosterone. What does testosterone do? Why is it so important? And what happens when testosterone goes down? Why do we see all these issues coming up when testosterone is down? And so, relatively speaking, estrogen seems to dominate. So firstly, we know testosterone is crucial for the development of male characteristics. It's also essential for reproductive health and fertility. Testosterone is also essential for libido, mood, cognition, and memory. So it impacts men's sex drive and mood, and low testosterone levels, interestingly, have been associated with reduced libido and mood disturbances. We always talk about too much testosterone bringing out aggression. But actually what we're starting to understand now is that testosterone actually gives men confidence and boosts mood as well. Interestingly, it's also good for bone health. And very importantly, it influences fat distribution and muscle growth. So when testosterone is low, we tend to see increased body fat and decreased muscle mass and strength, which of course leads to even more fat development. And finally, testosterone is wonderful for energy. The more testosterone you have, the more energy you have. The less testosterone you have, the more tired you are. So testosterone is a wonderful hormone. The way we talk about progesterone and estrogen in women, that's what testosterone is to men. Another interesting little factor is that testosterone is made from cholesterol. And I find this fascinating because so is vitamin D, and so is cortisol, your main stress hormone. So keep an eye on the cholesterol. It's telling you a lot more than just what your cardiovascular system's doing. 5% of your, and most of your testosterone, by the way, is made in the testes. 5% of it comes from the adrenal glands, the muscles, the adipose tissue, and the liver. Now, the body produces special proteins, sex hormone binding globulin and human serum albumin. And these proteins are used to transport testosterone around in the body. Now, these are important because this is how we regulate active levels of testosterone in the body. And of course, testosterone works on androgen receptors. So it docks in the little parking spaces on the target cells, which are called androgen receptors, or some sources refer to them as testosterone receptors. And they're abundant in the muscles and, interestingly, the fatty tissue as well. Now, another fascinating fact about testosterone is that it doesn't just go down one pathway where basically the body produces testosterone, the testes produce most of the testosterone, then it travels down to the target tissues, to the muscles, the brains, and the fatty tissue where it has its effects. It can also go down 3 other pathways. Testosterone can go down an amplification pathway, mostly in the prostate gland, but also in the hair follicles and the liver, where it essentially converts into dihydrotestosterone, DHT. This is a very potent testosterone metabolite, a very potent form of testosterone. So if you thought testosterone was good, dihydrotestosterone is 3 to 10 times stronger than testosterone. And it's produced with this little enzyme, 5-alpha reductase. This is important because when we look at dealing with prostate health, we're going to come back to this. Testosterone can also go down the, I love this, diversification pathway. So testosterone can diversify into estrogen. So this is interesting because there's an enzyme called aromatase, and it is abundantly produced in fatty tissue. So the more fatty tissue you have, the more testosterone is going to be converted into estrogen. So the more testosterone is going to go down this diversification pathway. And then, of course, you've got the inactivation pathway, and this is primarily in the liver, where the liver inactivates the testosterone so that it essentially can be excreted, so it becomes water soluble, and the body can say, right, you've done your job, enough now, you can go. So really what we're saying is the liver is a regulating organ for testosterone. This is something that we don't often talk about when we talk about hormone health and regulation. Always think of the liver. The liver regulates testosterone levels by essentially helping to metabolize, to make it water soluble, to excrete it. It also produces the proteins that bind and transport testosterone safely around the body. So the liver is very important in regulating testosterone, and so are the bowels, because once the testosterone's been metabolized, broken down, and it needs to be excreted, it ends up in the bowels, or it travels to the kidneys where it's excreted through the urine. But something very interesting happens in the bowels. We find a certain class of bacteria that can reactivate the testosterone and dihydrotestosterone. So think about it. If you're thinking, I don't have enough testosterone and I need more testosterone, look at your gut bacteria, because if you have enough of those bacteria that can reactivate the testosterone, you can recycle, you can upcycle your testosterone. What a wonderful natural way to help raise your testosterone levels. So looking at gut microbiota and the microbiome when it comes to testosterone, very important. But now I did say that stress is a huge factor. Why? To put it simply, we know that when we're stressed, we produce lots and lots of cortisol, the chronic stress hormone. Cortisol is a magic hormone that gets us through chronic stress. Unfortunately, the more your cortisol goes up, the more your testosterone goes down. And the more cortisol you have, the more your testosterone receptors down-regulate, shut down to testosterone. So the more stressed you are, the less testosterone you have. How does stress affect blood sugar, testosterone, and body weight? Well, we know that testosterone enhances glucose uptake, so it helps insulin do its job, especially in the muscles. Testosterone also regulates fat distribution and muscle mass. Now, we know that cortisol, the chronic stress hormone, the higher it is, the less testosterone we have. So the less regulation we have of fat, and so the more fat we tend to gain, and the less regulation we have of glucose intake, and so the more we are at risk of developing insulin resistance and diabetes. We also know that the more fatty tissue we produce with the lower testosterone levels, the more aromatase we produce, and the more aromatase we produce, the more testosterone we convert into estrogen. And so there we can see how stress cortisol essentially not only creates insulin resistance and increase in adipose tissue, but it also lowers testosterone, which exacerbates that insulin resistance, that risk of diabetes, and the increase in adipose tissue or fatty tissue in the body. And so this is why increased stress, lowered testosterone levels are considered to be a high risk for obesity, metabolic syndrome, insulin resistance, and diabetes in men. And to add, what do they say, fuel or fat to the fire, literally, when you look at leptin, which is a fat hormone, the more fatty tissue you have, the more leptin you produce. Leptin and your pro-inflammatory cytokines, so little messengers that are produced in the fatty tissue, essentially inhibit the hypothalamus and the testes, and so can also lower testosterone production. What's the effect or the relationship between stress, your thyroid, and testosterone? Now, it's a bidirectional relationship between testosterone and thyroid function. The higher the thyroid function, generally the better the testosterone. And so we know that stress raises cortisol levels and lowers thyroid hormone concentrations, which lowers testosterone concentrations as well. And we know this for a fact because we see this in hypothyroidism in men. So the lower the thyroid hormone concentration, the lower the testosterone concentration. And we know stress lowers thyroid hormone concentrations. And then what's the relationship between stress, mind, mood, and testosterone? Well, we know that cortisol causes biochemical imbalances in the brain, affects memory, mood, and learning. And we know that testosterone, like estrogen and progesterone, is very protective of the nerve tissue and can even prevent and delay memory loss. And so low testosterone levels essentially can increase feelings of irritability, fatigue, tiredness, and depression. So mix low testosterone together with stress, and you've got a beautiful recipe for depression, anxiety, fatigue, all sorts of problems. Something else I'd like to talk about that we very rarely talk about, both in men and women, and especially in men when it comes to testosterone and hormone health, is dopamine and prolactin. So we know that dopamine is a messenger that's used for drive, motivation, pleasure, and reward. But we also know that cortisol, the chronic stress hormone, and stress lowers dopamine. Stress also dampens your body's sensitivity to dopamine and disrupts and dysregulates the dopamine reward symptoms so that we have increased cravings for comfort foods, for alcohol, and for substance abuse. So the greater the stress, the lower the dopamine levels. Now, interestingly, the lower the dopamine levels, the greater the prolactin levels. Now, prolactin is a hormone that we just think about during breastfeeding. You know, the name is prolactation. So prolactin, we think, oh, you just need it for breastfeeding, but actually prolactin is involved in over 300 reproductive, metabolic, and immune processes in the body. And what we know is when prolactin levels are very high, guess what? Testosterone levels plummet. And so libido, fertility, all of these things become affected. This I see time and time again with athletes, bodybuilders, because what raises prolactin other than stress? Excessive exercise. So too much, I see this in gymnasts, in professional athletes. When your prolactin levels are too high, your testosterone levels plummet. How ironic. Excessive sexual intercourse. Now, I find this funny and ironic too, because what's the thing we try to do more and more of when we're trying to fall pregnant, when we have fertility issues, more and more intercourse? That's just raising the prolactin levels, which is lowering testosterone, estrogen, and progesterone. And then, of course, hypothyroidism, a big factor in raising prolactin levels. So always look at when the testosterone levels are low, check prolactin as well. So really what I'm saying is we've got quite a picture here. When a gentleman walks into a health food store and says, you know, I don't know if it's my testosterone, I'm just got no energy, I'm putting on weight, I can't lose the weight, I'm not stressed, no more than the average person. Really, what are we looking at? Are we looking at lowered testosterone? Are we looking at stress? Or are we looking at inflammation? Because they can all have the same root causes, all look the same. The good news is, because we work holistically, because of what we do, by addressing the root causes, by applying and addressing 3 key areas, really we're addressing everything. So we start by providing structural and functional support with nutrients. We address any dietary deficiencies. So we provide the body with the tools, the fuel that it needs to support the main structures and functions. And then we can look at harmonizing hormones, so supporting the hormones with herbs, with adaptogens. And of course, we do need to look at the lifestyle, and we do need to offer some lifestyle advice and support with sleep, with relaxation and self-care. So where do we start? Start with the liver. Always start with the liver. Support the liver cells. Help to repair and regenerate the liver cells, look after the gallbladder, and ensure good bile flow. And the top 3 plants that do this: dandelion, artichoke, and milk thistle. If you want a healthy liver cell, if you want good functioning gallbladder and bile flow so that the liver can clean itself out efficiently, dandelion, artichoke, and milk thistle. But I especially love dandelion because it's also good for the kidneys. It also helps the kidneys to stay healthy. Artichoke is also lovely because it helps with fat digestion and metabolism. And of course, they're all chock full of antioxidants, and I'm obsessed with antioxidant when it comes to any health issue. And this is because I see antioxidants as firefighters. Antioxidants essentially are the firefighters of the body. So whenever there's inflammation in the body, and when there's too much inflammation in the body, destroying tissue, we need to bring in the antioxidants, and the liver could not do its job without antioxidant supports. So turmeric, green tea, selenium, vitamin C, zinc, lipoic acid, beautiful sources of antioxidants and so much more. And my favorite amino acid, cysteine, or L-cysteine or N-acetylcysteine, which helps to form glutathione, which is the king of antioxidants in the liver. And interestingly, cysteine also helps to bind and remove heavy metals from the body. So very helpful and useful. Another source or nutrient or food that is wonderful, a group of foods that's wonderful for the liver, are your smelly foods, your smelly vegetables, so your glucosinolates. So any of your sulfur-containing vegetables, your cruciferous vegetables usually, so your broccoli sprouts, your watercress, garlic, all of these things that have these sulfur-containing compounds or glucosinolates are essential for liver health because they help the liver to process and remove the toxins, the carcinogens, the drugs, the pollutants, the food additives, the pesticides, all these horrible things that will affect how the liver regulates our hormones and deals with modern day living. Glucosinolates also happen to be potent antioxidants and also happen to have wonderful anti-inflammatory activity. Other beautiful, beautiful liver nutrients are taurine, B vitamins. Interestingly, there's been studies recently showing that B vitamins can be used to help prevent and even treat non-alcoholic fatty liver disease, NAFLD. And then, of course, we also have choline and inositol. Back in the day, we used to take lecithin. Some of us still do. Choline and inositol help to break down fats and absorb nutrients like vitamin D and K2. So now that we've supported the liver, how do we support the bowels? Because remember, once the liver's got, the toxins, water soluble, we need to excrete them through the kidneys and the bowels. So we need to support the kidneys and the bowels with a clean diet, proper hydration, increase your fiber intake, and of course, prebiotics and probiotics, which we'll talk about in more detail shortly. It's also interesting to note that it's been shown that the capacity of deconjugation or reactivation of hormones can vary between individuals, and this can be altered by supplementing with probiotics or changing the diets. So, as I said earlier, if you want more testosterone, if you want more reactivation, look at your probiotics, look at your diet. And of course, if we're going to talk about probiotics and gut health, we have to remember the connection between the gut-brain axis, the vital connection, and how there are certain microbes that can affect vagal nerve activity, that there are certain gut bacteria and microbes that can help produce dopamine, acetylcholine, noradrenaline, and even GABA. And let's not forget that 90% of serotonin, your happy messenger, I call it your sunshine messenger, essentially 90% of it is produced in the gastrointestinal tract. So do look into your probiotics. And the last reason for taking probiotics is they can help essentially to modulate your immune responses and can provide anti-inflammatory support. So I'm not going to go into all the detail here. Some probiotics have even been shown to affect appetite and weight gain. So that's fascinating. How do we address specifically if they come in saying, I want to look after my heart? There's a family history of cardiovascular disease and, or the wife or the partner comes in and says, I'm concerned about my husband's, cardiovascular health. And I know he'll never come in asking, but what can I recommend? Same old antioxidants. It's definitely not rocket science, which is a wonderful thing to be able to say. So lots of fresh fruit and vegetables, magnesium and potassium. There is no better way to regulate blood pressure than with magnesium and potassium. And of course, the fact that it takes 100 molecules of magnesium to process 1 molecule of sugar, it also helps to regulate blood sugar. And we know that ultimately diabetes and blood sugar can affect cardiovascular disease and heart health. Look into taking good fats in, because this way we can help reduce inflammation and regulate triglyceride levels. Sterols, sterolins, red yeast rice, all of these beautiful natural compounds have been shown to help manage cholesterol and reduce heart disease. 2 other recommendations that I love to make when it comes to cardiovascular health are, and this is something that's become more popular in recent years, your proteolytic enzymes that help to break down scar tissue, and basically the build up of, what do they call it, furring up of the arteries. So when we see, or we're concerned about atherosclerosis, or we're worried about clotting, if we want to make sure that the blood flows beautifully, easily, proteolytic enzymes, beautiful, beautiful. I call these the pipe cleaners of the blood vessels. And then, of course, vitamin D3 with K2. We know that sun exposure has helped to improve cardiovascular outcomes and also stimulates the production of nitric oxide, which opens up the blood vessels, helps to lower blood pressure, reduce the formation of clots, and even reverse type 2 diabetes. Do you know that as much as 98% of people with type 2 diabetes have vitamin D3 deficiency? This is latest research and latest findings. And then, of course, K2. We know that K2 shunts the calcium out of the blood vessels into the bone, so it protects the blood vessel walls from calcium plaque formation, and it's also anti-inflammatory. So K2 is a wonderful support with the D3. If, however, the customers come in saying, there's a family history of diabetes, this is definitely something that we see prevalent in different cultures, different groups, different areas. Risk of diabetes. So how do we address that? Same things we suggest for cardiovascular health, and the same things we suggest for general health and well-being. First, address the stress. Burn up the excess glucose with good high-intensity exercise. Look at the carbohydrates that you're having. Avoid the refined ones. Reduce your alcohol intake, because, of course, the body prefers alcohol as a source of energy to glucose. So this is a very easy, straightforward way of addressing diabetes. But if we want to look at supplements, there's so many out there: chromium, magnesium, zinc, B vitamins, alpha lipoic acid, bitter melon, and the list goes on. Green tea, fenugreek, berberine, omega-3 fatty acids, and even probiotics. All of these beautiful nutrients have been shown to support and help regulate blood sugar. I'm going to give a little special mention to bitter melon because I feel it doesn't get enough attention, and I am in love with bitter melon because not only is it beautiful for blood sugar support, but it's also been shown to protect the lipids, the fats in the blood, and to help reduce body fat and visceral adiposity, so that weight around the middle, and so help to lower blood lipids and even reduce high blood pressure. So helps with blood pressure, with body fat, as well as blood sugar. Beautiful, beautiful little ingredient. And of course, green tea, which is becoming so popular at the moment. But the thing I find most fascinating when it comes to green tea and diabetes and cardiovascular health is that not only does it support kidney, liver health, and lower blood sugar, cholesterol levels, but it's also been shown to contain 10 beta blocking compounds, 7 calcium channel blockers, and 16 ACE inhibiting compounds. These are all the types of compounds that they use in allopathic medicine to lower blood pressure. Good old green tea contains these natural compounds to help regulate and lower blood pressure. So very powerful compound. And finally, we're going to address the stress. Do you know that when you sit next to a loved one, your breathing synchronizes with them? And being near your sweetheart can drop your blood pressure by a full point. And even walking beside a loved one slows your stride by about 7%. So all good for heart health and for stress. So let's look at some herbs that we can use to help lower the stress or to adapt to the stress. And when it comes to male health, my favorite adaptogens have to be maca or Peruvian ginseng. It's got beautiful, huge amount of healthy and health-giving minerals, nutrients, liver-loving compounds which help to support liver health, and even certain compounds that help to improve libido in both sexes and reduce depression. Very interestingly, maca also contains compounds that work on the endogenous endocannabinoid system. So they help with pain, with inflammation, and even have been shown to help protect the nervous system. So maca is my favorite adaptogen, especially in male health. And my other favorite adaptogen for male health is ashwagandha, because yes, it's strengthening, but it's also very calming. So wonderful for stress and anxiety. Interestingly, can also support thyroid health, increasing thyroid hormone levels, and so increasing testosterone that way. But even more interestingly, it's been shown to help regulate testosterone levels, and so boost muscle mass and strength when testosterone is low due to stress. Now, I have to talk about theanine. I know it's not an adaptogenic herb, but it's certainly a wonderful compound when it comes to stress and anxiety management. And we know it's an amino acid found in all tea, and it creates a sense of relaxation without sedation. But the reason that I especially love it is because it especially helps with calm, clear thinking. It supports concentration, learning, memory, so you can be at the top of your game when you need to work, when you need to do certain, when you have certain expectations. And interestingly, I find it the perfect sleep support for that restless, racing mind. So it's not going to make you sleepy or groggy, but if your mind's overactive, taking theanine before bedtime with some magnesium, ashwagandha, works beautifully to give you good restful sleep. And the best thing about theanine, it works within an hour of taking. So you just use it when and as you need to. It's not one of those things that you need to take for a while before you see or notice an effect. It works really quickly. Now, I've left the best for last, and I hope I still have time. I have a few minutes left. So, prostate health. This is one of the main reasons that men, their partners or their wives will come into a health food store in most areas, in most situations. And this is for prostate health and prostate issues. Now, both benign prostatic hyperplasia or enlarged prostate and prostate cancer essentially result in growth of the prostate gland. But BPH is non-cancerous. So because we are working in a health food store environment, it is BPH that we will be talking about. We are not allowed to address prostate cancer. But as Vicky said, if anyone ever comes in with any symptoms that you're thinking this might be a prostate issue or asking for prostate advice and support, please, please, please send them first to their healthcare provider for PSA testing. So how common is BPH? 50% of men by the age of 50 and 60 will have experienced prostate hyperplasia or BPH. 90% of men by the age of 80 and older will have BPH. So it is hugely common. And yet again, this is something that men don't talk about, don't look into, and we don't address enough. Now, there are studies to suggest that BPH may be linked to an increased risk of developing prostate cancer. However, having BPH doesn't guarantee that you will have prostate cancer. So please test PSA levels. Now, before I jump into what we can do for it, I'm just going to highlight the prostate gland is a walnut-shaped gland that surrounds the urethra, which is the main tube which carries urine from the bladder to the outside world. Now, the only function of the prostate gland is reproduction. I heard one doctor saying the other day, if we could remove the prostate gland after a certain age, we would do it, if we could remove it safely. Because after a certain age, if you don't want to reproduce anymore, there is no function for the prostate gland. So the prostate gland produces prostatic fluid, which actually makes up 30% of the semen. So how do we connect DHT? How do we connect the health of the prostate gland to BPH and enlargement, and how does this all happen? This all comes down to a hormone called dihydrotestosterone. Remember that hormone that testosterone converts to, which is even more potent, up to 10 times more potent than testosterone. Well, there's an enzyme in the prostate gland and in the testes and in the hair follicles and in other tissues, but mainly in the prostate gland, that converts testosterone to this very potent form of testosterone called dihydrotestosterone. Now, dihydrotestosterone helps with growth of the prostate cells and development of the prostate gland itself. So it's wonderful if that's what you need and if you're in your reproductive years. But if you don't need, and if your body is overproducing DHT, we can run into problems. So essentially, why do we associate DHT with prostate problems and prostate enlargement? Because DHT essentially binds to testosterone or androgen receptors on the prostate cells, and it promotes the growth and the reproduction of these cells, and it even inhibits the death of your prostate cells. And so DHT essentially promotes growth and enlargement of the prostate gland itself. Now, in BPH, we see an overproduction of DHT, and so this leads to a dysregulation of the growth of the prostate cells. And essentially, we get an accumulation of the prostate cells, and the prostate gland itself enlarges. And what does it do? Remember, it surrounds the urethra. So it constricts, it obstructs the urethra. And so the main and only symptoms of BPH or prostate cancer, sadly, is, oh, I'm struggling to urinate. So as Vicky said, the main way that you will ever know that you have prostate issues, keep an eye on your PSA levels. Now, raised PSA levels don't always indicate that, you know, you've got prostate cancer, but it certainly sets the alarm bells off that there might be inflammation in the prostate gland, because DHT can also inflame the prostate gland, not just enlarge it. So keep an eye on your PSA levels. Signs and symptoms include frequent urination, especially at night. Well, we could see that with diabetes. We could see that with, well, I drank too much alcohol before I went to bed. Difficulty starting and stopping urination, weak, disrupted urine flow, and of course, feeling like you're going, but you haven't emptied it out properly yet. And sadly, the allopathic or orthodox treatments, very far and few between. Really, it's just managing the symptoms with alpha blockers, with sometimes 5-alpha reductase blockers, but really most of the treatment is just to relax the muscles of the bladder, and the prostate so that the urine flows more easily, but we're not addressing the gland itself and the size of the cells and the inflammation in the gland itself. And in extreme situations, there's a surgical procedure where they will operate on the prostate itself. But this is only if symptoms are severe, because it often leads to scar tissue and added problems. So what can we do naturally? Lots of things that we can do to naturally support and look after and protect the prostate gland. And we recommend doing this from the age of 40. The same way women worry about perimenopause and osteoporosis, men need to look after their prostate glands. So lots of antioxidants, fresh fruit and vegetables, especially those containing lycopene, carotenoids, vitamin C, green tea, all of these antioxidants help to reduce the inflammation and protect the prostate gland. Beta-cytosterols, these are natural compounds that you find in oils like rice bran oil, seeds, nuts, legumes, avocado, which has also been shown to help improve the urinary symptoms in BPH. And then, of course, help to address the inflammation. So avoid pro-inflammatory dairy, avoid trans fats, and increase your intake of good fats, your omega-3s. Reduce your consumption of alcohol, caffeine, processed, spicy, sugar-loaded foods, because all of these things are going to aggravate the prostate gland and inflame it as well. Nutrients like zinc, selenium, vitamin D have all been shown to support prostate health and regulate the hormones as well, and reduce the production of DHT, the potent form of testosterone. And then there are plants like saw palmetto, Hygium, nettle root. They've all been shown to help regulate the production of DHT by working on the enzyme that produces DHT. And then, of course, turmeric and ginger for inflammation. Wonderful to help provide inflammatory support and look after your weight. Stay physically active. All of these things promote good health. Now, you're probably thinking all of these things essentially is what she recommended for cardiovascular health, for diabetic health, blood sugar health. And of course, I'm going to finish off by giving special attention to nettle root, because the few years that I've been with Terranova and worked with this ingredient, I've been absolutely amazed. The reason I'm so amazed with nettle root when it comes to prostate health is because it's been shown to inhibit the binding of DHT to the cells. So the DHT that's already there, nettle root will block. So it works really quickly. The other reason I love nettle root is because it blocks essentially the activity of androgens like your DHT, and it helps to modulate essentially your sex hormone binding globulin, your aromatase levels, epidermal growth factor, and prostate receptors. So essentially can help to regulate testosterone, DHT, and all of these hormone levels and balance them out. So essentially, nettle root has been shown to help reduce prostate enlargement, improve urinary function, and provide anti-inflammatory support. All wonderful things from one simple plant or root of the plant. So if I had to make 3 top recommendations when it comes to male health, regardless of what they're coming in for, regardless of what the situation is, as Vicky said, thank you, please make sure they're having regular checkups. That's the first thing. Secondly, look at the liver and the gastrointestinal health, whether you do that through supplementation, diet, or recommendations. Magnesium and vitamin D. You cannot go wrong by recommending magnesium and vitamin D. And if needed, also provide some prostate support if that is what they specifically came in for. So hopefully what we've seen is that by prioritizing regular checkups, maintaining a healthy lifestyle and seeking professional help when needed, we can create an increased awareness and support for mental health issues and male health overall. And so we can empower men to prioritize their health and lead healthier, happier lives, which creates stronger communities overall. Thank you. I think I ran over time there.
That's all right. Only by a couple of minutes. So yeah,
Right.
thank you so much. That was really interesting. And the thing that I think shocked me as you were going through that is I mean, gosh, I've been doing probably nutrition for 15 years. That's probably the first time I've done a full section on male health. And it's
Thank you.
right, is 50% of the population, and we're just not really, we've gone nowhere in terms of addressing those issues. So I guess it's one for all of us in health stores to really try and open that up, and we are a place that gets people talking, so hopefully there's a bit more we can do.
Absolutely.
I don't know if we've got any more thoughts, Vicky, or if we've got a couple of minutes for questions.
Really quick one in. Orley is amazing because we're always on the same wavelengths, and joy to read that.
Oh,
I was
thank
going
you.
to say, just as an alternative to ashwagandha, because
Yes.
quite a lot of people who are concerned about ashwagandha and thyroid.
Yes.
You know what I'm saying, don't you?
Yes.
I remember many years ago being on the back of a bus when we did a health food trip to Israel, and we were all singing Rhodiola in the clover. Rhodiola if you don't want to, if somebody's a bit frightened about their thyroid and ashwagandha, rhodiola is a good alternative to it. And
Beautiful.
It's for energy and also male sexual health as well. So it's a good one.
Absolutely. Absolutely. I had rhodiola in the original presentation.
There's so
I
much.
took it out. You read my mind. Beautiful. Absolutely. Rhodiola. Yep. Totally. Great.
Amazing. Are there any other questions at this stage? I know we're kind of a little bit past time. I mean, I guess, Orley, if anything comes up that people want to ask, they can always
Absolutely.
ask
Email me.
or email you.
Absolutely. I find that's when the most interesting questions come up, and that's when I especially go down interesting rabbit holes. Yeah. Yeah. So please don't be shy. Put the questions in.
Absolutely. And you know, there'll be things there that are kind of case specific. I think because it's opened our eyes to all of the different areas that we can think about and work with, then hopefully we'll get more case specific questions that we can throw your way, which is always good to have somebody to refer to.
Brilliant.
Excellent. So Vicky, are we anything else, or are we all set to?
I think we're all set. That's
Lovely
so much
evening.
information, and that was just amazing. So
Thank you.
you.
Thank you.
And sorry about my singing, guys. And lovely to see so many people out there. So that's really good news. So yeah, looking forward to the next one.
Thank you.
Thank you so much, Orley, and thank you for joining us, everybody.
Oh, thank you too. Thank you.
Orley.
Thank you, guys. Night, night.
Bye.
Bye.
Thank you.
Bye.
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 Bye. Bye. Bye.
Bye.